They didn't chain him like a common criminal. They didn't summon a crowd to witness an executioner's blade. Instead, they approached the Temple of Athena Chalkioikos under the gray Spartan sky, tools in hand, and began the slow, deliberate work of turning sanctuary into tomb. Stone by stone, they raised a barrier across the entrance, each block fitted with the quiet precision of men who knew exactly what they were doing. Inside, Pausanias, the regent who had once commanded the combined might of Greece, felt the light dim, the air grow heavy, the distant scrape of masonry echo like a funeral drum. His breaths became shallower, more desperate, until even those faded into silence. This was no impulsive act of rage. It was calculated, almost merciful in its avoidance of blood on holy ground. Yet it was final. The man who had broken the Persian invasion at Plataea, who had avenged the stand at Thermopylae and preserved Greek freedom, was now reduced to a body pulled from darkness by the very city he had saved. His name was Pausanias. The distance from savior to condemned traitor can collapse in the space of a single heartbeat, or the slow piling of stones. To understand how that collapse happened, we must return to the battlefield where triumph first planted the seed of ruin. Before we go further, this channel has grown because of you. Every view, every like, every minute you stayed watching. If you love deep dives into the darker, forgotten corners of the past, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. We are building a community here at Echoes of History, and your support is what fuels every reconstruction, every script, and every story we tell. Thank you. Now, let's step back into 479 BC, where the fate of Greece hung by a thread. The plains of Boeotia stretched wide and dry under a merciless summer sun. Mardonius, Xerxes' chosen general, his cousin by marriage, a veteran of the earlier invasion, commanded an army that seemed to swallow the horizon. Estimates vary, but ancient sources speak of tens of thousands. Persian infantry in scale armor, Median archers, Bactrian cavalry, even Greek allies from northern cities pressed into service. Their camp sprawled like a living city, smoke rising from countless fires, horses stamping, orders shouted in a dozen tongues. Across the Asopus River, the Greek coalition looked fragile by comparison. Sparta, Athens, Thebes' reluctant exiles, Corinthians, Megarians, each contingent brought its own pride, its own generals, its own fears. Supplies were low, water was contested, arguments flared over who should hold the most exposed position, who deserved priority on the dwindling grain. In the center of this fracturing alliance stood Pausanias. He was not a king, not yet, not ever in title. As regent for Pleistarchus, the young son of Leonidas, he wielded authority borrowed from a dead hero. Every Spartan in his contingent knew the weight of that legacy. Every Athenian remembered Thermopylae's cost. Pausanias carried both the prestige and the pressure of being the living link to the 300. His word could steady wavering allies or ignite resentment. For days, the two armies watched each other. Mardonius probed with cavalry raids, cutting the Greeks off from the Gargaphia Spring, their main water source. Thirst set in, morale cracked. The Greek council debated retreat. A nighttime withdrawal was ordered, a maneuver fraught with danger and ancient warfare. Units lost contact in the dark. The Athenians veered too far east toward Plataea town. The Spartans and Tegeans found themselves isolated on higher ground near the old sanctuary, exposed and outnumbered. Mardonius saw his moment. He unleashed the full Persian infantry against the Spartan position. Arrows fell like black hail, shields splintered under impact, men dropped without a chance to close. Pausanias stood amid the storm, immovable. Sacrificial omens were unfavorable. Spartan custom forbade advance without divine approval. His soldiers endured the barrage, holding formation through discipline drilled since childhood, bleeding into the dust as they waited.
When the livers finally showed favor, Pausanias gave the order. The Spartan lines surged forward in perfect lockstep, shields overlapping, spears leveled, a collective war cry rising like thunder. The clash of bronze against scale armor was deafening. The heavy Greek infantry ground into the lighter Persian ranks, shattering their cohesion. Mardonius, fighting desperately in the front lines to inspire his breaking men, took a Spartan spear thrust and fell dead. His elite guard tried to rally around the body, but the center entirely collapsed. Panic spread outward like fire through dry grass. By evening, the Persian camp was overrun, its treasures looted, its survivors fleeing toward Thessaly. The invasion that had burned Athens was over. Greece stood unbroken.
Pausanias had achieved something unprecedented. He had held a coalition of rival city-states together long enough to deliver victory against the largest empire the world had known. The aftermath was euphoric. Trophies were raised, sacrifices offered. Pausanias himself dedicated a bronze tripod at Delphi, inscribed with the names of the Greek states that fought. For a moment, he was the embodiment of Hellenic unity. But victory on that scale does something insidious to the human spirit. It convinces a man that the rules binding ordinary people no longer bind him. Pausanias had gone from commanding the combined might of the entire Greek world back to being just a regent in a city that violently despised individual glory. Sparta demanded absolute conformity. Pausanias now demanded absolute reverence. The war did not end cleanly. Persian garrisons lingered on islands and in coastal strongholds. Trade routes needed securing. The Greek alliance agreed to continue operations under Pausanias' command. Cyprus was liberated. Then came Byzantium, the strategic jewel controlling access to the Black Sea grain that fed Athens and others. Whoever held Byzantium held a chokehold on half the Greek world. Pausanias took the city with little resistance, and there, far from Spartan oversight, the first cracks appeared. Reports drifted back to Laconia like smoke signals. Pausanias had discarded the austere Spartan way of life. Rough wool cloaks gave way to embroidered Persian robes. A personal guard of non-Spartans, hired mercenaries, perhaps even freed Persians, shadowed his movements. Communal messes were replaced by lavish banquets, where guests reclined on couches rather than sitting on hard benches. He adopted the ceremonial protocols of Eastern satraps, attendance, elaborate greetings, a style of command that felt regal rather than egalitarian. To the Ionian Greeks serving under him, men who had rebelled against precisely this kind of Persian luxury, the change was not just distasteful, it was betrayal. Whispers reached Sparta. Their regent was behaving less like a victor and more like the tyrants they had just expelled. Worse still were the rumors about prisoners. Several high-ranking Persians, nobles related to powerful satraps, had been captured alive. In the brutal economy of ancient warfare, such men were worth fortunes in ransom or political leverage. Yet these prisoners disappeared from custody. No payments recorded, no exchanges documented. Pausanias claimed administrative error, a simple oversight in the chaos of conquest. Few believed him. The only plausible explanation was that he had quietly released them, perhaps to curry favor, perhaps to create obligations that could be called upon later. Sparta's ruling council began asking the dangerous question, what favor was Pausanias hoping to collect from an empire still smarting from defeat? The ephors, Sparta's 5 annually elected overseers, guardians of tradition even over kings and regents, acted with characteristic caution. They sent no army, issued no public denunciation. A single terse message arrived: return home. Pausanias complied. That obedience surprised many. A man with a fleet, a fortified city, and personal alliances could easily have defied the summons. Instead, he sailed back, confident his record would protect him. The trial that followed was perfunctory. Charges were vague, conduct unbecoming a Spartan, overreach of authority, adoption of foreign ways. Evidence was circumstantial. The robes, the banquets, the vanished prisoners. No hard proof of treason emerged. The Ionians' complaints carried little weight in Sparta. Outsiders' opinions rarely did. Pausanias was acquitted. But victory came at a price. His command was revoked. Naval operations shifted to Athenian leadership. First Aristides, then Simon. This quiet transfer marked the beginning of a profound shift. The alliance that had defeated Persia would soon evolve into the Delian League, an Athenian-led network that grew into empire in all but name. Pausanias had lost Byzantium, lost his fleet, lost his official power. Yet he refused to fade. Without authorization, he secured a single trireme and returned to the Hellespont region, settling in Colonnae on the Troad coast. There, he operated independently, running raids, forging contacts, behaving as if the recall had never happened. Sparta's patience ended. A second, sharper summons arrived. Return immediately or be declared an enemy of the state. This time, he came back. But something darker followed in his wake. The new accusation was existential. Pausanias was said to be negotiating not just with Persians, but with helots. To understand the terror this inspired, consider Sparta's foundation. The city-state's economy, military, and social order rested on the systematic subjugation of the helots, descendants of the original inhabitants of Laconia and Messenia, conquered centuries earlier. Ancient estimates put their numbers at 7, 10, even 20 times the Spartan citizen population. Helots farmed the land, produced the food, carried baggage in war. Spartan boys trained from age 7 in the agoge, partly to prepare for the constant threat of revolt. The Cryptia, secret police, patrolled the countryside, assassinating any helot who showed promise of leadership. Fear of helot uprising was the shadow behind every Spartan law, every ritual of discipline. A rumor that Pausanias, a regent of the Aegead royal house, had promised helots freedom in exchange for support. True or invented, it struck at the heart of Sparta's existence. If even one member of the elite was willing to arm the oppressed majority against the citizen minority, the entire system could unravel overnight. The accusation alone made Pausanias radioactive. Proof finally materialized in the form of a letter. Pausanias had been corresponding with Artabazus, a Spartan satrap acting as intermediary to Xerxes. The messages were private, carried by trusted couriers. One courier, noticing previous messengers never returned, opened his dispatch before delivery. Inside, he found explicit terms. Pausanias offered to deliver Greece into Persian hands in exchange for personal power, perhaps governorship of the region, perhaps marriage into the royal family. At the bottom, a final instruction: kill the bearer once the message is received. The courier turned the letter over to the ephors instead. Even with written evidence in hand, the ephors hesitated. Pausanias was royal blood. He was Plataea's hero. A public arrest risked division among the elite, unrest among helots who might see him as a martyr. They devised a trap. The messenger was sent back to Pausanias, feigning terror, begging for reassurance about the lethal instructions at the bottom of the scroll. Behind a hastily erected partition, crouching in the suffocating dark, the ephors listened. They waited for Pausanias to deny it, to strike the man down for forgery. Instead, the regent's voice drifted through the timber, calm, arrogant, untroubled. He did not just confirm the plot, he coddled the messenger, promising him wealth and protection if he just delivered the treasonous terms to the Persian king. Every word of reassurance was a nail in his own coffin. The ephors had their absolute proof. Pausanias sensed the trap springing. He fled to the Temple of Athena Chalkioikos on the Spartan Acropolis, sacred ground where suppliants could claim divine protection. Killing him there would invite pollution, plague, barren fields, divine wrath. The ephors stopped at the threshold. A tense standoff ensued. Then they found their loophole. Rather than enter and spill blood, they dismantled the roof. Timbers and tiles removed piece by piece until the interior lay open to the elements. Then they began sealing the entrance, stone upon stone,
The doorway began to shrink. But as the gap narrowed to a sliver, a final frail figure approached the threshold. It was Pausanias' own mother. She did not weep. She did not plead with the ephors for her son's life. Without uttering a single word, she lifted a heavy stone, placed it deliberately at the entrance, and turned her back, walking away into the Spartan gray. The debate was over. If his own blood condemned him, what mercy could the state offer? The remaining stones were slotted in. No blade was drawn, no sacrilege committed in a technical sense. Inside, Pausanias watched the light vanish completely. He heard the rhythmic thud of blocks being placed, the low voices of workmen, the occasional command. The air thickened with dust and his own exhalations. Hours stretched into days. No food passed through cracks, no water. Eventually, the sounds from within ceased. When the ephors ordered a small section opened, they found him barely alive or already gone. The body was removed, the wall rebuilt. The temple stood silent once more. Divine retribution followed swiftly. The oracle at Delphi condemned the manner of death. Pollution had been incurred despite the technicalities. Sparta was commanded to atone. They commissioned bronze statues placed near the precinct. Some sources suggest they depicted Pausanias himself, a memorial to the man they had erased. The irony is stark. The state that had suffocated him in darkness now honored him in metal. The consequences rippled outward. Sparta's prestige among the allies suffered. Ionian trust, already eroded by Pausanias' behavior, never fully recovered. Athens stepped into the vacuum, consolidating the Delian League into an instrument of dominance. The power shift that began here would culminate decades later in the Peloponnesian War. Athens versus Sparta, empire versus tradition. Pausanias died not because guilt was proven beyond doubt. Ancient sources still debate how much was real, how much manufactured by enemies, but because he represented what Sparta could not tolerate, a man whose ambition might upend the fragile balance of fear and control that kept their world intact. In sealing him away, Sparta sealed a door on its own vulnerability. They preserved order at the cost of flexibility, unity at the price of innovation, and the echo of those stones, placed one by one in the quiet of a sacred precinct, still reverberates through every story of power that rises too high only to be pulled down by the very system it once defended. Thank you for watching.